There's a specific moment in every relationship that most people ignore. It's when your body starts to relax, when the obsession fades, when you stop checking your phone every 5 minutes. Most people call that falling out of love. It's not. It's the moment love could actually begin, if you're willing to stay, or the moment you quietly start preparing your exit. But most of us were never taught what love looks like when it doesn't rescue us, doesn't intoxicate us, and doesn't promise to keep everything painful away. If you stay with me, you'll see why we confuse intensity with love, and why that confusion keeps repeating itself, even when we swear it won't. When we fall in love, something very specific happens. Something measurable, something that feels undeniably real. Your brain releases dopamine, the same system that activates when you want something badly, when you crave a reward, when you think, I need this now. Dopamine is the chemical of anticipation, pursuit, and desire. You know that feeling when you can't stop thinking about them, when every message feels like oxygen, when hours feel like days until you see them again. That's not love. That's your nervous system chasing a high, and it works a lot like addiction. The next coffee, the cigarette you didn't need, the scroll you can't stop. Not because you're weak, but because your system prioritizes short-term reward over long-term clarity. Falling in love feels exactly like that. Everything becomes intense. The other person feels extraordinary. At the same time, something critical happens. Your perception narrows. Red flags feel less urgent. Contradictions get explained away. Boundaries slowly shift. The so-called rose-colored glasses aren't a metaphor. They're a biological state. And here's what makes it dangerous. You're not falling in love with who they are. You're falling in love with who you need them to be. Your brain fills in the gaps, projects qualities they haven't shown yet, interprets silence as depth, mistakes unavailability for mystery. You see potential instead of patterns. You hear what you want to hear. You ignore what doesn't fit the story you're building. And the person standing in front of you, they're barely visible underneath all that projection. That state doesn't last forever. Maybe months, rarely years. During that phase, you're not especially rational, which is exactly why it can make sense to listen, at least a little, to people who aren't inside the rush. Family, close friends, people who've known you long before this story began. Not every warning is correct, but not every concern comes from jealousy. Sometimes others see more clearly because they're not intoxicated. Here's what most people miss. Your system doesn't choose what's good for you. It chooses what's familiar. You react to relationship patterns you already know, to emotional dynamics you've lived with before. Sometimes that means confusing control with care, or strictness with love. Sometimes it means trying to earn affection because that's how closeness once worked. If warmth was inconsistent, intensity feels normal. If love had to be deserved, effort feels like connection. You don't do this consciously, you do it automatically. These patterns live deep in the subconscious, long before logic can intervene. Your nervous system isn't searching for a healthy future. It's searching for recognition. And recognition often feels safer than change. An extreme example of this is how common toxic relationships are. Not because people want chaos, but because familiar pain often disguises itself as love. Some relationships keep you permanently activated. Closeness followed by distance. Validation followed by withdrawal. Warmth followed by coldness. And every brief return of affection feels stronger than the last, not despite the pain, but because of it. Pain activates. Uncertainty keeps you alert and focused. It creates an emotional high that's easy to mistake for love. And once your body learns that rhythm, calm can start to feel empty. When the effect fades, you look for the next spike, the next conflict, the next reconciliation, anything that makes you feel something. Not because you enjoy suffering, but because activation feels like meaning and stillness feels like loss. This is often a desperate attempt to bring the butterflies back to life. What usually emerges instead is familiar pain disguised as love. But here's the uncomfortable truth. In every relationship, healthy or not, the butterflies disappear. Always. And in that gap, between the high fading and trust forming, most people panic. They compare what they feel now to what they felt at the beginning. They ask themselves what went wrong, what changed, who stopped trying. But the comparison itself is the trap, because the beginning was chemistry, and what comes after requires presence. The early phase asks nothing of you. You just react, you just feel. What follows asks something else entirely. Choice, consistency, responsibility. And many people mistake that moment, not for a transition, but for proof that something is missing. And when they do, you face a choice most people never consciously make. Do I need another rush? Or can I tolerate closeness without drama, without constant stimulation, without emotional volatility? Some people switch partners, others stay, but recreate intensity through conflict, jealousy, or instability. And some discover something else entirely. Trust. Trust is quiet, unimpressive, but durable. And that scares people. Because quiet feels like settling, like giving up on something better. We're told real love should feel extraordinary, that if it doesn't take your breath away, it must not be real. But here's what that belief ignores. Extraordinary is expensive. It demands constant novelty, constant proof, constant intensity. And intensity isn't sustainable. What's sustainable is someone who shows up, who doesn't need crisis to care, who chooses you on ordinary days, not just the exciting ones. That's not settling, that's growing up. And the present almost always loses because memory stores highlights. The first kiss, the first night together, the moment you knew. What memory doesn't store, the ordinary Tuesday, the quiet evening, the moment nothing happened, but you felt safe. So when intensity fades, the past feels more real than the present. And that's when people start looking, not always for someone new, sometimes just for proof that they can still feel that way. That the problem is the relationship, not the expectation. Real love rarely announces itself loudly. It shows up in ordinary moments, being there for each other even when you're not at your best. Celebrating the other person without turning it into comparison. Helping without immediately expecting repayment. Love isn't just taking, it's also giving. And many relationships quietly fail because of unspoken expectations, because of what you hope to receive without ever articulating it. Here's where most people get stuck. They wait for their partner to finally understand, to read between the lines, to know what they need without being told. And when that doesn't happen, resentment builds. Not because the other person is cruel, but because they can't meet needs they were never told about. Nothing changes because your partner finally understands. Everything changes when you stop expecting them to know what you've never said out loud. That's the shift most people avoid. Not because it's hard, but because once you speak clearly, you can no longer hide behind disappointment. Honesty is uncomfortable. Openness makes you vulnerable. But this is where something grows that outlasts every rush. Trust. A shared life without constant searching. Not for a better person, not for a stronger feeling, not for proof that you're lovable, but the ability to stay. Not out of fear, not out of habit, out of clarity, out of the understanding that love isn't about feeling more and more. It's about running away less and less. Maybe love doesn't hurt because it's wrong. Maybe it hurts because you learned to call the wrong thing love. Because real love doesn't require self-betrayal. And it doesn't promise that everything will be easy. But it offers something no chemical high can replace. A place where you can stay without needing the chaos to feel alive.